Well, good morning there, friends. Thanks for clicking on this video. And as the title is suggesting, this video is about a learning curve. But it also has to do with a comment that someone left underneath my previous video when I talked about having my Great Plains loaded for 7 days, originally loading it with a spit patch, and that spit patch drying out and causing my Great Plains to be inaccurate. Somebody said that that was unacceptable. Well, I'm going to challenge that comment, and then in the process I'm challenging myself also. But before I get to the full content and the full discussion of this video, I have some visual aids, but I want to show you something because last night at 12:30 I was woken out of a sound sleep by my dogs barking violently. So I'll just have to show you and explain what took place. So there's the bedroom window, and at 12:30, as I mentioned, was woken out of a sound sleep by the dogs barking very violently and very loudly. And the cause of that is seen right here. Get out of the sunlight here and get you to see full view. So when I jumped up to look out the window, I saw a huge bull elk standing right here, and then it bolted off. Now, how do I know it was a bull elk? Well, what alerted my dogs is that the motion detector went off, and this whole area was hit with floodlights. And I know that the elk came from this direction because you can backtrack it to, once again, drinking out of the pool that we put out here for one of my dogs to cool off during the summer months. It's still got quite a bit of water in it, but let me walk over and show you the alfalfa bale. So on the way over, you can clearly see that there's a fresh elk track on top of my boot print. Leading on over to the alfalfa bale, should also be noted that on Friday, this was a brand new bale. And last night, these elk tore it up. Another angle of the alfalfa bale. You can see they kicked it out that way a little bit too. So I can imagine at one point these elk began to smell that fresh alfalfa. This little trail right here is just cut up with tracks. Now I'll tell you guys, when I came home on my deer hunt last Wednesday, my wife was anxious to show me other elk tracks of the elk crossing the yard at that time. And I can tell you that these tracks are from last night, because when my wife and I walked the property looking at the elk tracks that she wanted to show me when I came back from the deer hunt, these tracks were not there. So in the previous video, when I showed you the inclement weather and the rain that I had to hunt in, it also rained here at home, and this portion of the driveway ends up filling with water and becomes, a water puddle. And at that time, you can see that the elk were drinking out of this water puddle, which would be in my driveway. Now this is coming across the driveway to where my wife parks her car. So you can see how close these elk are not only coming up to the house, but to where we park our vehicles. There's the vehicle, and I'll pan on over to the house. They're coming in quite close, but there's another reason why they do this. So last night, I had to get up and let the dogs out into the backyard, which is fenced off. I'll show that in a moment. I could hear another group of elk running away from the house at that point. And the reason why the elk are back here is you can see that the leech line provides a ton of green grass, and this green grass pretty much stays year long. And there's the backyard, and hopefully through the reflection of the sun you can see it's fenced in. I'll give you another view outside of the sun here. But while there was elk around the front of the house, there was a bunch of them back here feeding on this green grass. So this is the back end of the dog yard. You can see it's fenced in, and I'm going to pan right down, and you can see just how close these elk are coming to the house and the backyard, and also just where I'm at with the green grass. So once again, you can see that the elk are definitely traveling around this property quite a bit. So I learned, a few years ago to keep this area right in here mowed, because it does create a trail right up to the green grass that grows year round, like I said, from the leech line. But it's not only a trail for the elk. I'm going to show you something also right here, if I can find it again. There are also fresh deer tracks that are also going to the green grass. And here's even a baby deer track. Might look big there, but you can see that's still a young deer. So I really feel blessed that my wife and I found this piece of property 18 years ago, and being able to see this wallow life just outside our back door. And just in case anybody might be curious, yes, from time to time, along with the deer and the elk tracks, we do occasionally see mountain lion tracks and bear tracks. Okay, on with the rest of the video. So in further thinking about making that one shot with my Great Plains and hitting the target where I did, and in view of that person's comment, he basically said he'd be happy even if the bullet hit this edge of the circle. Okay, fine. If that's your measuring stick of being accurate and or inaccurate, then that now reduces this distance to 1.5 inches. Think about it for a moment. Now, I've mentioned before on this channel, I think in different terms. For me, that shot is a kill shot, and I'll exemplify this in a little bit further. But if you were at a rendezvous and you were competing with a Great Plains rifle with spit patches, you would never have to contend with your patch drying out over, at least in this case, 5 days, because my hunt was 5 days, not 7, but it took me some time to get home, get things unpacked, put away, and resituated, some chores taken care of, and things like that. So I let another 2 days go. So bear that in mind. At a rendezvous, your spit patch would be used almost immediately. Now, I've mentioned before on this channel, and I've demonstrated it through some shooting, that my Great Plains and even my flintlock both have coned barrels. And I cannot shoot a pre-lubed patch, because once that ball hits that void that allows the fire of the gunpowder explosion to go around the ball, and it does throw it off. And I've demonstrated that on this channel. So please, when you make comments, understand the full context of what I've put on this channel. You may not have known that my Great Plains has been coned. Now, I'm perfectly willing to admit, if that was at a rendezvous, and if I was shooting at a, 10-inch target, steel target, I'd be going, yeah, I hit the steel target. Is it really a miss? If I was shooting at an open triangle like we do at Cache La Pleau, where you have a 1-inch piece of steel in the form of a triangle, damn, I missed. It's all irrelevant, isn't it, friends? Again, if I was shooting at 30 yards at even a 12-inch steel target, yay, I hit it. That's the male ego at play. Now, what did I learn from this in particular? Well, if I get drawn again for either a deer or an elk hunt, and as I showed, this was my Great Plains, 30 yards, 80 grains of gunpowder with a maxi ball. That gun's accurate. See? That's why I do this, not only to show myself what's really taking place, but also for those that take the time to watch what I've done, you have the full context. Now, the one thing about this, yeah, I got a chicken over here laying an egg or doing something, so you'll have to ignore that. But the thing about the maxi ball is that it has grease grooves. And those grease grooves, unlike a greased patch, is not going to be thrown off course because of the fire going around it, consuming a patch, if that makes any sense to you. Makes sense to me. But let me show you something else about this particular target. Okay, so let me get readjusted and I'll show you. So obviously my 3D target is not to scale, and if you look at it, you can see that I colored in red of where the heart would be located on a deer. Okay, now you have to bear in mind that the size of a deer heart is a little greater than the size of your clenched fist. Maybe about the size of a grapefruit. It's probably smaller than that. But I'm going to step around the front of the camera and show you something real quick. So here's my fist, and I'm going to place it on the target. Okay, here's the upward arrow. That's where the bullet went. If I was aiming at the heart of a deer, which is about the size of my fist, you can clearly see I would have hit the heart. Even if it was like this and I missed the heart, it would have gone into the lungs. Look at where the heart is painted in on this 3D target, and imagine you missing that way. You'd be right in the lung area. It's a kill shot. But I'm going to do something else. Stay tuned. So I just placed that red circle over the heart that I colored in. And if you can look at where that bullet impacted out of that Great Plains, again, not to scale, but you can see even in this illustration that that bullet is placed well within the lungs. That is very much acceptable because I made meat. And as I mentioned earlier, if I was at a rendezvous and I was shooting at a 10-inch, 12-inch steel target and aiming for the center of the target, and that's where that bullet placed, we'd all be screaming in joy, "Yay, I hit the target!" Again, everything is a matter of perspective, and a lot of it is irrelevant. Because if I was shooting at a rendezvous, there's no way on God's green earth would any of us have loaded a spit patch and left it in a gun for 7 days. None of us would have done that at a rendezvous. Because on day 1 or day 2, you're out there shooting the range. And you're shooting multiple shots during that one day. So even if you use a spit patch at a rendezvous, shooting from station to station to station, that patch is sufficiently lubricated. What I did here, and as fate would have it, this is the extreme of what took place during my deer hunt. This is the extreme. 7 days. Patch dried out, patch disintegrated, and if you took time to watch the entire video, you would have seen the first 2 days I hunted in inclement weather. And to say that no water got down my barrel would be an incorrect statement, because it did. And I did the best to drain it and dry it out when I got back to camp. But all in all, for me, 7 days on a deer hunt or even an elk hunt, this is very much an acceptable shot. At a rendezvous, if you're shooting at a steel target, you would accept this as a hit and not a miss. So what I'm trying to express here is that what's acceptable for one person may not be acceptable for another. And even when I got back to putting content on this channel several years ago, I even mentioned back then, if I can consistently hit a 4-inch circle, I'm happy. And that's especially offhand. Now, as I just demonstrated and showed by way of illustration through that 3D target, this is very much an acceptable kill shot. Once again, bearing in mind the deer heart about the size of your fist. A little bit bigger, smaller than a wilting grapefruit. That would have hit the heart, wouldn't it? But if I was at a rendezvous shooting paper targets, no, I would not be pleased with that at all. But as I mentioned, at a rendezvous, shooting at anything, you would not be shooting a dry spit patch. You would be shooting a spit patch that's consistently wet from shot to shot to shot. That changes the entire course of this discussion. Now, for me personally, if and when I get drawn for deer again here in New Mexico, now that I know that a 1 in 66 twist can sufficiently handle a Thompson maxi ball, I just may now switch to that. See, prior to this, I didn't know, because I was always told that a 1 in 66 twist was too slow for the Thompson maxi ball. It's too inaccurate. Yeah, right. There again, are those comments made from in-field experience, or are they made from inexperience, or are they made from the lack of knowledge, from the lack of testing these things yourself, or from the male ego? You decide for yourself. But I do know one thing. When it comes to my Great Plains, my Lyman Great Plains, I cannot shoot an oil patch, grease patch through that gun because it's coned. And I've demonstrated that on this channel. It becomes very inaccurate. Although the inaccuracy is still within this 10-inch paper plate. Yay! I hit the steel target. I would still count the point at a rendezvous. But hunting deer? Yeah. That's kind of up in the air. But this, having been loaded for 7 days and that patch dried out, it's more than enough to kill a deer. More than enough. Very acceptable. Take it with a grain of salt, guys. That's why I kind of do this stuff on this channel, to kind of like debunk some of the stuff, such as, well, a 1 in 66 twist can't handle a conical or a Thompson Maxi ball. Yes, it can. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.